advertising is dead. It's all business now. And talking about business, there are certain categories of the business ecosystem which we don't talk about enough and actually should, because these are the categories that oftentimes are the ones pushing towards educating, normalizing, and often enough destigmatizing the usage of those products. I mean, a case in point is the absorption hygiene products category, which includes diapers, sanitary pads, and adult diapers. And a company that's been really pushing the conversation ahead, pushing the products ahead in this category is Nobel Hygiene. And today, to tap onto this segment, but also core focus on the adult diaper segment, I have Kartik Johari on the show. He's the Vice President of Marketing and Commerce at Nobel Hygiene. And I'm going to be talking to Kartik about all of these pieces, how he hires, how he looks at working with his team, and so much more. I'm Varun Dugrala, and this is Advertising is Dead, where it's all about business. Right back with my chat with Kartik. Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're talking to Kartik. Kartik, this has been, I feel, a recording that has not only had hurdles of calendar matching, but as of the last 15 minutes of this recording, internet matching platforms have exchanged. There is a lot that's happened to make this chat happen.
Yeah, man. I hope the universe wasn't pushing us apart from some other weird reason, but very, very happy to do this now. I'm very excited. It's finally happening.
Likewise. And you know, when I was doing research on category, right, and one of the core things that I kind of was looking at, and I was saying this to you before we kicked this off, is that there are certain segments in the business environment where, you know, they're so ever present. There's such massive parts of the business ecosystem, part of our daily lives, but we don't talk about them enough. But I feel in many ways, both the marketing as well as a lot of stuff that's happening around that is really bringing certain categories to light. So what you would always, in my head, would call a diaper segment is, and I've just found out, is the absorption hygiene products segment, which actually in many ways encompasses so many pieces there. But I want to actually ask you that if you look at your journey across Nobel and even through the process, what have you realized over a period in this segment that most people don't get, and what you didn't see before you got into it?
So, interesting question, man. I mean, trying to distill like maybe a decade's worth of insights down to one principle is usually hard. But I think off the cuff, if there was one thing that I've realized about the category and about such taboo products, specifically with friends or with, with you, it takes inadvertently longer to change people's perceptions about things. It seems like one of those basic golden rules that, should apply, right? But call it a marketeer's folly, call it condescension or what, there's always that fire within oneself saying that you can come up with a few amazing campaigns, spark some national discussion, and things should change. But as we've come to realize that it's the hardest thing in the world truly is to change someone's paradigm on whether it's a product or a problem. For us, all the more consequential because the product comes after the problem, right? And the biggest problem that we face with adult diapers is that the users, they don't want to reflect upon it. One of the first primary researches that I conducted truly had this nugget, this one line that said, your users are the biggest roadblock to product adoption. And I said, damn, now if that's not a marketing statement, then I don't know what is, So it's truly been a privilege and an experience to try and sort of build on to this multi-decadal effort to A, educate people about incontinence, and B, taking it a couple of steps further, ensuring that, they get the chance to experience azadi or a modicum of freedom, which they've sort of forsaken in their lives back again. So that would be it.
And that's, I think, an important point, right? Because oftentimes when you talk to people, especially across the marketing space in today's world, the conversation becomes about educating. But in your case, it was a lot more about destigmatizing for you and got into educating.
Correct.
And so when you look at that, what were the initial steps you kind of took as a brand? So these are things you kind of have to do to kind of even bring that in. Because when I look at what you're putting out now, there's a lot of cultural relevance in there. This is, the kind of even content collaborations you've done, etc. It's I've seen that I can make out it's been a bit of a journey, but what were the initial pieces that you kind of did? Okay, this is where we start. This is where this is really going to grow from.
Okay. Destigmatization is unfortunately no easy nut to crack, right? Educating is, I feel, easier because at least the people have a propensity or at least an open mindset to learn about something, right? If hide and seek is going to come and tell you about this amazing new brownie laden biscuit, your first proclivity is to be like, oh, whoa, what is that? I want to know more about it. But here we are dealing with a product and a category, no matter how much value it provides or how empowering it is for the end consumer. And I can share some examples of those too. Is how strong denial as a force exists. And that is the first step and the first challenge that we had to sort of tackle and unpack piece by piece, right? Because it's about susu potty issues, right? Now, baby diapers is, of course, far easier as a conversation. But when you go with adult diapers, it is the most culturally and hygienically sensitive topic that one could breach, right? And this goes across it goes far deeper in our own brains than we even sometimes give it cognizance of. One of the best books that I've ever read in my life, very life-changing, was it's called The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, wherein a neuroscientist describes, and there are 5 flavors to our brain as there are to our tongue. And one of them is conscientiousness, which is deeply tied to religiosity, which is deeply tied to spiritualism and cleanliness, right? So that is a core drive which an adult diaper forces a person to confront. As a man, what's practically the worst insult you can give to any other man is ki sala tera pant gila ho. Right? It is a challenge on his control. It is a challenge to his masculinity, and it is a challenge to him, his entire being, right? That I am not even capable of controlling the most basest urge that a man experiences. And herein, how do you make sure that a person goes ahead and confronts that within his own mind? And not only confrontation is one aspect, that's when denial kicks in. Acceptance is truly where the bridge needs to be made, So it's again, to allude to the previous answer, I don't think there's anything me or anyone else can do to sort of create an overnight change in this. The problem is far more deeper, right? Though we're privileged with all the years of effort that we've taken, that we do see a reflection of more openness in people willing to discuss the problem, even within their own families, right? The users still remain our biggest roadblocks, but at least the family members are now far more open to having this conversation and sort of being that bridge for the product and for the user in their own homes.
And that's an interesting consumer insight, right? Because oftentimes it's not, you believe you're only talking to the consumer, but it's actually the ecosystem, the community around them that becomes so core for, just like adoption of a product, and a product which they actually do need, but are like, are worried to kind of take on, or they feel a sense of there's obviously shame. There's a lot of stuff around that as well.
Absolutely.
What have you learned about the core consumer and that community beyond this, over this period, which, initially you would say, okay, this wouldn't work, but it did end up working? Were there specific pieces that kind of came up that you were like, okay, I never thought that this would actually be a core insight on the consumer?
Something far left field. The golden one that I mentioned, now it seems obvious in hindsight, but that was a surprise to us. Another recent surprise to us is how much the community is still averse to talking about the diaper, even though they use it, right? Now that came as a surprise to us. And this is coming from homes that have been using our product for close to a decade now. It's an institution in their homes. Their local network knows about it. Their chemist certainly knows about it. And everyone's in the know. Having said that, even though we introduced an upgrade to the product, right? And this is a specific case when a consumer wrote back about one of the changes that we made. We said, this is fair, this is our logic behind it, but for your specific issue, can we recommend an overnight diaper, which we pioneered, and it's the best in the country, and you should face no issues whatsoever. There was an overwhelming amount of reluctance for him to even have that conversation. Saying, who's going to go and have this internally? भाऊजी के साथ कौन बात करने वाला है? नहीं, अभी उन पे इनका comfort बैठ गया है. नहीं, आप इसे ठीक कर दो, हम काम चला लेंगे. So again, that averseness to change, even though you are already a decade into the product experience journey, you are still not comfortable openly talking about the problem and even improving upon it, because the product now allows for it. But that's again a strange barrier that keeps coming up. So, which for us, we are always flanking, like try to get around their mental barriers somehow.
And therein comes another aspect, right? Is that even if you look at it broadly, and I'm going brought beyond friends as well. You look at sanitary pads. I think except for diapers, which is like maybe baby diapers, even when you go to purchase, the thing always used to come in this one cover, which even's like hidden. It's almost like a thing, right? And that's it's taken a while for that to come away. How do you look at the branding itself as a way to kind of take away the challenges of adoption? Because I love the fact that your brand's called Friends, because it connotes a few things, but I want to kind of get into the core insight of, and has that kind of almost the branding also kind of helped in kind of reaching out to a consumer?
Oh, of course. I mean, it does. Our name is a huge boon to us. When Boss eventually originally came up with it, I didn't think he realized the significance and the value that it will provide 20, 25 years down the line. It does make for an easier onboarding and for an easier conversation. Absolutely. But the moment you move beyond just friends, no one knows just friends. It's friends, adult diapers. Yeah. So therein we are back into the conflict, right? So branding wise, and I'm taking an assumption here that you meant beyond packaging alone.
Beyond packaging, yeah.
Of course. So I think the number one thing that we try to always go for is trust, right? It's a very intimate problem. And unless we create trust right at the outset, there is no chance of us to have any sort of conversation, right? All the reassurance, convincing, trial, everything happens later. So the first step is to try and be an authentic, honest brand that someone on the leg of even one single communication can trust. Yeah. So that I think is the most important facet, and it's very hard to build into communications. It's an ongoing process. It takes, again, like I said, very new ways, new mediums always keep flanking, and it takes time. But wherein we've seen successes, we've seen some truly mind-blowing, heart-rending stories come out of it.
I want to kind of shift gears and I want to kind of look at the broader context of things. What I've noticed in recent times, and I'd love to get your thought on it, is that when you're taking in product and you're placing it in what is almost socially, consumed content. Like I've seen, for instance, the collaborations you've done with, let's say, a TVF and some of the others. You're kind of placing it as part of a broader narrative. Have you seen that to be a core tool, especially in sectors like this? And then even beyond just, let's say, the adult diaper segment, do you see that as being a core function of just like marketing in general and kind of pushing product out?
Interesting question. Now, the second part of it is easier. Of course, I think now it's become one of the standard branches in the giant tree of what is marketing.
Exactly.
Right? So what value drives for us? I think the TVF integration, because we've spoken a couple of times about it. And we've had a new one come out just, I think, a few hours or a day before. This was our attempt to sort of get into the mind space of the third generation, which exists within the same home, right? I'm going to borrow a line from my wife here, but she says that there's a reason why grandparents and grandchildren are so close. It's because they share a common enemy, which is the generation in the middle. And because of that, there is a unique bond that exists. And throughout our primary research, what we saw was that there is this set usage or product adoption pattern that kept jumping out, right? That specifically either the daughter-in-law or the grandchildren in the house were the ones to always fight. And they said that first conversation, complete mind block. Second conversation, anger. Third conversation, now when the grandson or the granddaughter is feeling angry herself, then blows out into full conflict, right? Saying, why aren't you using this product? You're shackling yourself inside your home for no rhyme, no reason. You're letting go of your social circle. You're letting go of the activities that bring you joy in this day and age. What's the need? No, diaper nahi pen. Diaper means I'm bedridden. I can still make it to the bathroom. I'm still very much in control, right? Unfortunately, education is step 2. What we try to educate them is that it's more of an insurance, right? There's a WHO study that states that the most number of senior accidents in the world happen when they're quietly going their way to the washroom in the night, right? And at that point, post 65, if you're going to break a hip or fracture a leg, it's very hard for your body to heal. So use it as an insurance. You don't have to void yourself into it if you're not in that position, but at least you're going to save yourself that run up the stairs as soon as you reach the mall or as soon as you reach your home because your bladder's just about to go and you're ringing the bell frantically. Save yourself of that experience, because that's where mistakes are committed. And what we've realized was that after these points of conflict that the third generation was having with the original, there is one thing that all Indians hate universally. This is waste. So what the younger ones did was कि भाई अभी तो पैक मैंने घर पे लाके रख दिया. अभी आपको फेंकना तो you lift it with your own hands and you throw it into the trash, which no one will do. Saying, oh, money's been spent. Now I might
how can I waste it?
Correct. And
Yeah.
post that is when we've seen transformation journeys. We've seen, again, live examples where the seniors have come back within 72 hours and have said that, okay, I want this size and I want this variant and I need 3 packs in my cupboard at all points in time. And then they've gone a decade beyond in with happier stories.
And it was super interesting what you just said is it's not just consumer behavior from a purchase pattern, but it's like literally consumer behavior in terms of how even family dynamics from a cultural sense really matter, and especially products like yours. That's so important because that interaction is leading to all the steps you want to go through. You want to go from normalizing to educating to everything else.
Very much. Varun, it's even part of the core problem itself. If I may just narrate a short story, right?
Yes.
This is again from a primary research where a grandfather said to my team that this is the summation, one line. कि मैं अपने ही घर में अछूत जैसी जिंदगी जी रहा हूं. Now, who wants to feel like an untouchable in their own home? Man? That is, I won't wish that on my worst enemy. And here is a poor man at the very end of his, still has 20 years to go, right? But the end of his professional career, now is the time to enjoy life. He had one accident on the hall sofa where he leaked when he wasn't aware of what was happening. Now he's ostracized by his entire family because now he's restricted to his own room. There is now an pervasive smell of urine that floats around the room. And that sort of is like an halo that drives everyone away. And to what end? The families are deeply involved in this, irrespective of what we may think. Another point, and I'm sure you can relate to this even more personally, is one grandfather said that the only spark of life in my joy used to be that I could take my granddaughter down for 2-3 hours every evening and play with her. But after I've been incontinent, now that's been taken away from me and I would fail to understand why I even continue living. Main kyun ji raha?
Correct.
Again, deeply rooted problem. So we have to take the family along if we are supposed to resolve this.
And while you spoke about the specific cultural nuance of this, when you look at, and if you take a broader perspective on the overall market, obviously, and when you look at diapers from a baby sense, you're looking at sanitary pads, you're looking at adult diapers. As industries, there has been a fair bit of evolution, both from how you market, how you connect consumers, what consumers really want, how even the industry is like. So from a broader sense, what are you seeing as the opportunity in this space on a broad lens? If you just take a bit of we zoom out right now.
On the entire absorbent hygiene space, yes. Frankly speaking, we have a long way to go, my friend. Our journey, even though this is now soon to be our 23rd year of operations, we've barely begun. Right. Adult diaper penetration in the country is about 1%. Sanitary napkin and baby diaper penetration numbers range from 15 to 18%, right? But it's less than a fifth. So if you can imagine 1 out of 5 babies who can use a diaper or 1 out of 5 women who can use a sanitary hygiene product, they are the ones who are using it. There is no one else. So we truly have a long way to go. And I think affordability and education, etc., are just one shade of the entire pie, right? We've seen trends from other countries and we sort of need the entire ecosystem to evolve beyond this. The more people learn, the healthier that they live, the more that they earn, their proclivity to spend on hygiene increases. We've sort of seen this inflection point in China, right? When they reached a per capita income of about $3,300 or something of the sort, is when healthcare spends skyrocketed. That's when people started being obsessed about personal hygiene. Absorbent hygiene kicked off in a huge way. That's the hockey stick point. India is where 1600, 1700. So not even halfway there. So it's truly going to take a community-led effort, right, to improve our situation holistically so as to give people more time and freedom in their lives to pick this up.
And I think that's a super important point because, and the reason why I wanted to zoom out is that oftentimes when you're going in deeper, you get certain insights. But when you look at it from a broad sense, you really also see how much more work needs to be done, what more we need to kind of get towards. And so kind of looking at both those lenses in that sense also kind of helps people understand what needs to be done, what is happening right now, and kind of like how to bridge that gap in that sense of the word. Do you also see this segment and look at where you are right now, and this is more on an individual capacity, look at your journey from the time you came in to now. What have you learned about yourself as a professional? How has that evolution been?
I've learned so many things on it, but I've frankly never thought of how I've sort of evolved. It was always a plan. I knew that there were certain things that I'm good at. I sort of feed my energy into the organization. And in the truest sense, I would like to call myself a catalyst, right? And this I didn't know about myself when I joined the business. As with any young upstart with 3 years of work experience, few startups under my belt, I came back and I thought, okay, let's professionalize the system and let's change it, blah, blah, blah. Of course, I had a bit more patience, so it took time. But it's a very often quoted statement that nothing is done by one man alone. And it's always a team that does it. I didn't know what a great team player I was, right? And I'm very proud to say that I'm not a born leader. I'm not a leader in any aspects. There are people who lead functions in all facets and functions of my company. I am a catalyst, and a catalyst, true to its function, is useless without the base chemicals. So if my team is there, and if they are committed to my brands and they are committed to my consumers, I can work with them to supercharge their efforts, right?
Yeah.
But I am nothing alone. And that is sort of the first skin that I had to shed after I've joined the business, right? And that consequently led to tremendous amount of growth, because with every conversation, I had to sit across the table from my CFO or my sales head or from my trade marketing head or my training head. And there's always so much to learn. There are guys with decades of experience and valuable insights. And, if you just drop the fact, your ego is not your amigo. So you can just focus on that. I think the rest works out.
Yeah. It's super interesting that you spoke about leadership in the way that you did, because I feel that oftentimes that is not spoken about. The assumption is that if you're in a function, you have to be a leader, versus what you said with being a catalyst. And I think that's a huge point that most people miss. Trying to really make yourself not be what is your innate skill set, and you're moving towards what you feel is required, but not necessarily be the best way for you as an individual and a professional to kind of move towards it. So but then that also might lead to you then I'll hire with that in mind. I may hire with the fact that because I'm a catalyst, who's working around me needs to be functional to that. You're not hiring with a separate mindset and functioning with a separate mindset. That kind of works together. Yeah. And one of the core things that we always like to ask on the show is that, what do you look for when you hire? But I know we need to go for a break. So I'm going to leave that open-ended so people stick on. So we'll go for a quick break and be right back with Advertising is Dead. Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still talking to Kartik. Kartik, we left it on a bit of a interesting point when we went for break. Like I said, you're a catalyst. How does that direct how you hire the ecosystem around you when you're working, especially in a category like yours and with a thought process like yours?
I think well-roundedness is something that I try to drive always within my team, right? I'm most cognizant of my own flaws, which is why most people in my team are hyper-organized, because my organizational ability is squat, right?
I relate to that perspective.
Correct.
I totally relate.
So, but that's from a team perspective, right? Individually, when I step into interviews, what do I look for? Firstly, it's not really an interview. It's more of a conversation. I deeply respect the privilege that I've been given to ask open-ended questions to a person about any facet of their life, right? At least professional life, but we all know it bleeds over. So I'm very respectful of that. And what I try to look for is the person's story, and does the story makes sense? One of the things that I don't tend to compromise on is 2 points that I can share. One is communication, right? We all wish that we were in a world of superpowers. I read a lot of fiction. We've all seen the Avengers and X-Men movies. We all know what power we would want. We don't, unfortunately. We live in our real planet, and the only superpower available to all of us is our own tongues. Every single interaction of your life is dictated by how well you can communicate and what words you can employ where. Right? So that to me, at this point in our journey, is non-negotiable. You need to be an excellent communicator. You need, whether orally or written, you should know how to get your point across succinctly. You should know how to resolve conflict without it blowing up. And more so than that, you should always be cognizant of the importance of each and every word that spills out of your mouth, right? So that's one. Second thing, what is one of my newer questions that I've been asking for the past 9 months is, what is a person's mental diet? We all have a physical diet, sustains us, keeps us going. What do you do for your own brain, right? And most people ask me for a clarification. What do you mean by mental? And that point I clarify. And then I see them stuck saying, I like to watch this. I like to read this. But simply changing the perspective of that question, otherwise normally you would ask you what content do you like or what content do you consume. When you put the diet paradigm, suddenly I see the spark go off in their own mind and they start reflecting saying, yaar, what is my mental diet? It's the equivalent of a McDonald's, which I've been consuming for 20 years. So at least I've been able to share that insight with people. So there again, I look for very diverse input streams into people's brains, right? It doesn't matter if you listen to podcasts, if you read, if you write, if you watch. But there should be diversity in thought. Because come on, you're getting into marketing, right? And it's the most generalist of all functions. So unless you are getting 12 different streams of input in your brain, how do you plan to synthesize something outstanding and come up with a good plan? So that's one of the things that I push people for too.
I love the mental diet point because I feel that that's something I know I've spent a lot of time thinking about what do I feed my mind. And I work with a coach. I was talking to my coach the other day and she actually said that don't only consume stuff that is connected to what you do, because our tendency is to always focus on don't read about the creator economy. Don't only read stuff about marketing or entrepreneurship or like how your mind works. Read fiction for all you care. Find fantasy. So I think that's also super important when you think about the mental diet. Saying, are you giving yourself diverse input so you aren't also stuck with that blinder, because that's very easy to kind of get into.
Correct. And Varun, that's one of my pet peeves, actually, like when people in interviews say that, oh, I read. I've been reading since I was a year and a half. Couldn't practically even read at that point. But my mom used to leave a book in front of me and put a tape on. And when the ting sound used to come, I used to know time to change the page. Boom. So I've read a fair amount, right? When people say they read and then they start narrating all these books, about rework, and then they're going to talk about something about neuroscience or the journey of the mind, this, that. I'm like, Macha, this is not reading, right? Reading encompasses a vast swath of things. You're just in your own microcosm thinking that you're reading. And this was really driven to me home because of some article that I was reading, and I think HBR, MIT did this sort of neuroscience experiment, and they found that when people read fiction, and specifically high fantasy fiction, there are parts of their brain that light up, which have to do with empathy, sympathy, and putting yourself in that person's shoes, and also about world building, creation, questioning the very fundamental rules by which we all operate, which none of the other genres take you to. And at that point, when I read it, I'm like, oh wow, man, I really lucked into this, because I've been reading fiction since a very, very early age. But after that, it's sort of had a very deep, profound impact on me. And now I urge people to start with, either a manga or a manhwa or something to get you out of your comfort zone. It's okay if you read a comic, but inject some variety into what goes in. That's the starting point.
Yeah, that's so true. And for someone to using that to kind of move it towards a direction is that if somebody wants to understand the opportunities in the space in which you function right now, say, okay, I want to work. I think this category has, obviously, we've already also through this conversation realized that the opportunity is there for people to really get in and be able to kind of push this part, because there's so much more to do. What are the skill sets that you need beyond what you said that I need to kind of learn more about? Or is it something which I need to get into, dig deeper? Or are there specifics that you kind of need to learn before?
Nothing specifically for our industry as a whole, I would say. More so from an FMCG orientation, because that's how we truly see ourselves. And in FMCG, there are certain golden principles that always align, right? You have to be extremely consumer centric. You have to get research oriented. You have to let data speak for itself. So all of these things, I think, are step one. If you want to come into this space, there is us at Nobel Hygiene. There are multinational giants that exist above us. It's a whole host of other local domestic competitors below us. But the ability to rapidly learn and to switch hats consistently, I think that is one of the core drivers. And it holds in good stead in any field, but in FMCG and in disposable absorbent hygiene, absolutely, right? It's a complex product, which I don't think many people even realize, right? Most people tend to think of a diaper as this cloth sandwich, but it's a 140-foot long machine where I have to stabilize 15 raw materials in real time, run by 3 engineers to make 600 diapers, 700 diapers a minute. So it's extremely fast-paced, very automated, highly intensive and variable. So if anyone's interested to get into this space, you have to be a quick learner. And otherwise, you're going to be stuck in doing the rote things that it's replicable across any brands. You could do BTL executions in chocolate. You could do the same in diapers. But if you really want to succeed, you must learn.
That's a point which often gets missed, right? Is you kind of go in saying, okay, I just have broad understanding. I understand how marketing works. Let me just try to cut, copy, paste from one spot to the other. But it's not just cultural understanding, consumer understanding, but also like understanding how specific, like I think what you just mentioned about the FMCG understanding is super important, because the more you understand today's world, and it's moved, there was this point where everyone spoke about, oh, everything's going to be D2C. But I think we all learned that you cannot take away the importance and the scale of what the face-to-face retail or modern trade, as it's called, is played. If you take the last 1 year into contention, I want to actually ask you, if you look at trends going ahead, because you've spoken about how we've kind of come here, we've spoken about it. What are you seeing consumers ask more of, and what are you seeing as trends just in terms of even the products, where are they kind of moving? Because the term sustainable obviously comes up a lot, especially in this category. But beyond that, what else are consumers asking for, and where do you kind of see what are you looking at trends for the future?
Sure. So sustainable, of course, is one of the key trends that comes up, but unfortunately, it's very urban bubble, right? That's where all of these conversations exist. Like I said, sanitary napkin penetration is at 16%. So imagine the ones who are talking about sustainability. You're far removed from the realities of the world that we operate in. And to point on that, just for anyone, because we've had so many conversations on reusable diapers and biodegradable sanitary napkins, as an industry, we would love it if such things exist and can be scaled. We are no strangers to what kind of an impact our products have, and the industry as a whole has been working to decrease that impact continuously for over a decade, right? So that said and out of the way, right? For anyone who is using these reusable products, etc., I urge you all to consider the water cost of what you're doing. We ourselves are in the state of Maharashtra. There are documented examples of children traveling for 2 hours by train to pick 2 pails of water and coming back to their village. You think everyone has the privilege to keep washing 8 or 10 diapers a day, hanging them out to dry in a hygienic facility and manner? Do we think everyone has the privilege of reusing sanitary napkins and cleaning it and hanging it out to dry again? Hell no. Right. So sustainability is still far ways away. I think biodegradability with the help of the government is something which is far more achievable, and to set up a circular economy for all of these things. And that's something that we're trying to encourage and have conversations with as well. Another larger and more long-term trends that we're seeing is towards value, right? Inflation's biting everyone's pocket as we speak. Recessions are apparently around the corner. It's like this boogeyman we've been waiting for 4-5 months
For a while now.
For a while now, yeah. Having said that, so the conversation's being deeply driven towards value, right? I don't say cost competitiveness. I think an Indian person and an average Indian consumer is more than happy to pay for the value he receives. But he should be very clear about the value that he receives, and if you can make that case very strongly, I think you're in good stead. So all in all, a lot of innovation going on throughout the category as to how can we increase the value that our products give to our users without compromising on quality, without compromising on the things that they've grown accustomed to and the things that they trust about it.
Towards the end of every episode, I do this one segment, which is, and I think we've done a brief bit of that, because when we spoke about mental diet, etc., where I asked my guests a set of questions which aren't necessarily about what we've spoken about, be it the market, be it the business side of it. It's more about you as an individual. So what do you spend a lot of time doing beyond work that really keeps you involved, keeps you going, and it's a point of focus for you?
So what charges my battery? Right?
Yes, what charges your battery? Perfect way to put it, yeah.
I think reading, right? Like I said, voracious reader. So I love consuming written word. B, I am a Sony PlayStation loyalist from PS2 days. So whenever a few hours in the week, when you get time, I love to game, and that sort of really, refreshes the mind there. And these are two things that I try to stay on top of, right? Reading is, of course, something very core to me, and I urge everyone in my team and all the people I meet to do so. Like I said, whether a comic or whatever, but start. So those are some of the things that charge my battery. I've also very recently woken up to the benefits of your own body and health. So now swimming is one of my newer addictions. So I hope to keep that going too.
Anything you've read recently that you recommend? Or rather, anything you added to your mental diet recently? I'm going to use your term on you. That you take. What's on your mental diet?
So I'm at an unfortunate disadvantage with this question, because my streams of input are very diverse already. Right. But something recently that I would recommend, I'm actually reading this lovely book on gamification principles by Yuki Chow, I think. I can just check the name. But I recommend that book wholeheartedly to everyone, right? Because gamification is just the tag on it, right? Gamification deals with human motivation. And everything you do in life, especially if you're a manager or a team leader, you have teams, you have people you need to motivate, even in your own family, even with your own spouse. Everything's a conversation and people need to be motivated to move ahead. And there are such simple principles you can pick up and you can deploy. I think it should be made one of the mandatory reads, at least in, classic MBA style educations. People need to know how people function.
I love that. Like, people need to know how people function, because oftentimes that's the one thing we don't really learn, right?
Oh, not at all.
I was talking to, and I think a professor in one of these universities, and I was like, why don't you teach people how to have conversations? I said, it should be a mandatory podcast module just so you know how to have a conversation, because if you put in front of that mic, you have to talk. I said it's important to kind of do that, just to kind of learn how to kind of put points across and how to evolve in that space.
Absolutely.
There's one question I've asked every single guest so far, and it's been the most interesting one to just see what people respond with, which is, what can you put together in an instant?
What can I put together in an instant? A rhyme?
I don't think anyone said that before. I think someone said a poem, but I don't think anyone said a rhyme. So you would be the first one in all these episodes to say a rhyme.
I'm so happy to be the first at anything. What was the most common answer, Varun?
People say Maggie, or some say chai. Those come up very often. Although Maggie went away for a while, and now it's come back in recent times again as an answer. But people say an idea sometimes, but a rhyme hasn't come up on that often. Just kind of close things off and ask you, what's the best piece of advice you've gotten?
Wow, this takes me back. It was transformational in many ways, right? I had the privilege of having some great professors back in my MBA day, and one of them's advice always stuck with me, right? He said two things. One, everything for everyone is nothing for no one. So focus, the counterpoint of that is deep focus. One other thing he said, because he was a B2B professor, he said the biggest mistake people do is when you're trying to build up your story. And classically, if you're pitching any product or solution, your price is last, right? Which is utter bollocks. It should be first. Yeah. Because when you scale out your activities, you need to filter right at the outset of who is appropriate and who's not. And B, if your service costs 25 lakh rupees, state it right up front, then build your justification so your receiver also tries to understand and frame it in the right context. Don't let it leave hanging, And later on, I went on to realize that there's a marine communication concept around this. It's called bluff, which means bottom line up front. And this is the one thing I tell everyone in my organization and the people who I work with, saying, state your point, then go to the story. Don't ghuma fira. No one has the patience or the mental fortitude to listen to 4 minutes of inane prating on and on and on, and then get the answer to the question. Pehle jawab, fir kahan.
The last time someone said that was, I was talking to a creator who's super popular on Instagram, and he said that in storytelling you always have the setup, the twist, and the conclusion. In when you're making short form content, you start with the conclusion. You start with the giveaway. Then you tell the story. So that's literally what you just said. But if you look at it, that's exactly how that is working for them as well. So I think that's a fabulous piece of advice to kind of give. I know this recording has been through everything from scheduling conflicts to my internet giving away to changing platforms. But thank you so much, Kartik. This has been a fabulous chat. Tons of stuff for people can take away from this. And thank you for coming on Advertising is Dead.
Yo, my privilege, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you. A pleasure to finally have this interaction. I hope through all my learnings, I was able to share a modicum of something that the viewers find interesting and have the potential to change their lives a little bit.
Thanks a ton, Kartik. There's tons to take off from this episode for sure.
Awesome.
If you like this podcast and you want to listen to more podcasts like this, head over to the IVM Podcast website or app, or wherever you get your podcast from, and look at all the podcasts that IVM makes. There's some really fun stuff there.